If you have a product or service that you sell through launching, you are going to love our conversation today with Brenna McGowan, who is a copywriter and launch strategist. Listen in and hear all the wonderful things she has that can help you launch more effectively and more painlessly. Welcome to the Breakthrough Mastermind Show. I'm your host, Jen Argue, and I facilitate masterminds for women entrepreneurs who want to grow their businesses to help others and create financial independence. I'm so excited that we have a guest with us today, Brenna McGowan, who is a copywriter and a launch strategist. And she has a specialty with maximizing the pre-launch part of a launch. So we're going to have such an exciting time today getting to know Brenna and all the wisdom that she has to share with us. So welcome, Brenna. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Like I said, I'm a launch strategist. That's where I spend most of my time these days, is really helping people through the strategy part. Well, I actually started off as a social media manager, but have spent a lot of my time copywriting, which I think truly helps with all of the strategy, because I've been in the trenches when it comes to copy and all of those things that's so important during a launch.
It's so true. Copy is so important. And before we dive into the whole launch strategy conversation, I want to go a little bit behind the scenes in your business, because there was something you shared with me that I was so impressed about. And you'll know what I'm talking about when I tease this out a little more. But it's very common for women entrepreneurs to have had a very untraditional path to get to where they are. And I would love for you to share with our listener how you got to where you are and at what point in your life that you got there. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I'll try and give you the condensed version, because as I joke around, when you're middle-aged, I'm like, how far should we go back? So long story short, I was a stay-at-home mom. That was my, primary quote unquote job, when my kids were little. And I started picking up some like odd jobs and doing blogging and email marketing and this and that. But it was about 2017, and I was working for a company. And I liked having a little bit of extra money. Like I joke around that I started this started this business because I wanted to make $500 extra a month, like pay the electric bill and like have enough money to get Botox. Cause at that point I was like turning 40. So that was like my primary goal. Like, can I get Botox and like pay the electric bill and have like a little extra cash around? So long story short, I had a friend at that time who was starting a business, and I wanted, once again, I always joke too, I started because of vanity. I wanted eyelashes. So we traded, like, I was like, because I had done these little odd jobs, I had decided to I thought I could do her social media, and she could give me eyelashes. And so about that time, I started doing these things from her, and people were commenting like, oh, I love your social media. I love what you're doing, which is even funnier because I literally had no social media for myself. I had no Instagram, barely any Facebook. And I was like, gosh, maybe I could do this for like a living, right? Like as a business. My kids are a little bit older now. And so when I was about to turn 42, so I wasn't like in full midlife crisis mode, but slightly, where I was just like, okay, I spent my time raising my kids. They're getting older now. Like I need to do something a little bigger with my life. And I had a friend, like I said, I was doing odd jobs. So I had told a friend, like, I just decided I didn't want to be like someone's assistant. Like I wanted to do my own thing. And so I just decided to launch this business and do social media management. And I truly didn't even know that's what it was called. Like, that's how naive. And then before, I know we talked about this a little bit, like I joke around, like the online world is like this, like, underground universe that, like, if you don't know, you don't know what's going on here. So I launched a business and then realized I had no idea what I was doing, and quickly like immersed myself in all things online business from that point.
So fascinating. Can I just ask you, who are some of your early superheroes that kind of gave you your footing in the beginning?
Gosh, well, when it comes to like, I really was figure it out as I go. When I think back to like when I first started, like I was like going to the library and checking out books by like Gary Vee, which I'm not even necessarily like a Gary Vee fan, but I think he made the online world understandable to me. Like, oh my gosh, you could actually do this and go, right? Like what amazing opportunity there is. So that's one thing that really sticks out to me when I think about in terms of like copywriting. I found Laura Belgray not too long into my business. I knew at some point, because when I said I was doing social media management, I was doing everything. Like I was doing email marketing, I was doing blogging, I was doing Pinterest. I was like, anything to do with online business, I was like, sure, I can help you and I'll just like figure it out. And so when I decided like I was making like $2 an hour and needed to like really niche down, definitely finding Laura Belgray, who has, subsequently become a friend and a mentor of mine, that she was definitely someone who helped me realize like, oh, I can write like these little stories I have going on in my head. I can actually put those out and sell with them. Like, okay, this is what I want to do. So she was definitely one of my first, my friend and mentor, Chris Orzakowski. He was one of the first courses I took on email copy. And it's just amazing to me. Like I had the honor of speaking in his group last week. And I was just like, wow, this is just so cool to see, like, this like full circle kind of come around. And also my friend and mentor, Marisa Corcoran. When I think through like my business, the three people that have like mentored me and really helped me, those are the people that come to mind for sure.
I love that. And what I love about hearing that is that you really connected with them. Not only did you discover them, but you actually engaged and became friends with them and colleagues.
One of the first books I read when I was young was, I was just telling my brother, the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? So I feel like that's like embedded in my soul, just like being a human, right? And being a good human who wants to help others and be friendly and doing that. And I think it's really has served me. I mean, that's what you should just do anyway. But I do think I've always had that like, okay, how can I, be helpful and network and do those things. And I think that's really helped me along in business more than anything else, right? It's those people skills in the end that really matter.
It really is. Like you said, being a human with each other just makes such a world of difference. So I love that you had those early beginnings. What is something that contributed to your growth when you think about the soft skills of running a business? Not something strategic that you had to learn, but something that comes more from the inside or is intangible.
Right. I think the soft skill, and I did a master class for my own program. And this is actually one of the things that I brought up because I think it's one of like my guiding principles, which is to keep putting stuff out there, even when it feels like no one is listening to you, right? Even when it feels really quiet, because there's ebbs and flow in business, no matter what. And there's just naturally more quiet times where things are now, of course, if it's quiet for too long, obviously you need to start looking at your strategy, right? Like, but when I'm talking big picture, it's just like, no, like, okay, I made this mistake or this didn't seem like it went off. Okay, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to not write emails anymore. I'm just going to keep on writing emails. I'm just going to keep going out. And I think that's one part where what I've been good at is like, okay, if I tell myself I'm going to write an email a week, I'm writing an email a week, but even when it's quiet, no one's responding because I see it over time. I see how, months down the line, someone will be like, oh, remember that time that you talked about, your daughter wearing Crocs? And I was like, oh, like, you never told me you like that stuck with you, right? There's just time and time again, you will find in online business when you keep going that people are watching you. And it's usually the quiet ones. My friend Reese and I were talking about this. It's usually the quiet ones that end up buying from you in long term. So I think that, that's kind of like a side benefit, but I think that's definitely been something is like, even when I didn't know what I was doing, I just kept doing it anyway. And it does pay off over time.
Oh, those are such words of wisdom. We hear over and over again that success comes from consistency, but the consistency is where the mental game is because it's so hard. And we have all these beliefs about no one's listening. But like you're saying, people are listening. There's just interacting maybe, but their hearts are being stirred. And they're probably the ones that are going to be the best customers.
Yeah,
So to
I
keep
agree.
going.
And I don't
Oh,
think it's like consistency, like, oh, like I got to post 3 Instagram things a week. I just think it's just slowly, like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to, oh,
yeah.
this freebie didn't work out. I'm just going to keep trying again. It's the big
Yeah.
picture, that you just keep going no matter what it feels like.
Yes, yes. And to not feel overwhelmed by it too, because you can focus on getting good at being consistent in one area at a time until it feels
100%.
more normal and easier to do, and then
Yep.
move to the next thing.
Agreed. That's the
Yeah.
only way to do it, right?
Yes. So tell me, what are some of the hard skills that have really made a difference for you?
Well, I think copywriting, obviously, like learning how to write your own copy is huge. So, yeah, at some point, maybe you'll get to a point that you hire a copywriter, but that's usually pretty expensive as well, right? Like,
Mhm.
so knowing how to write to your people, and even if you do hire copywriters down the line, understanding like fundamental copy principles is always going to help you in your business. So, learning how to do that. And then, thankfully, it's my profession, but I do think, we all are writing copy for our business constantly. So having that has been really big. And I think too, the other hard skill that I've learned is being good on video. Unfortunately, like I
Mm.
was terrified to do video. Like when Instagram lives first came out, I had a friend and she was like, come on, let's do a live. And I'm like, oh, I can't be on video. Like I can't, like that is freaking. And then I did it and I was like, oh, okay, this wasn't that bad. Right. Like, and people actually like paid attention and watched me. And so I'm not a like video guru at all, but I do. And who knew in 2019 that like by 3 years later, it would become a must in business to be on video. So thank God I did that first live. But I do think just going on video and doing it scared, not being perfect at it, you get better as time
Mhm.
goes on. And I think too, there's something intimidating to me about being 40. Like when I started my business, like I said, I was 40. I don't have a 4-year degree, like I was a stay-at-home mom, with no social media. So it seemed super intimidating. Like who is going to listen to me? Who cares? Right. And I realized that like each of us has this opportunity to, have our own story. Like people aren't looking for perfection. And I think this goes back to what we talked about earlier. They're looking for human, they're looking for real people that they can relate to. I think one of my superpowers is I'm very empathetic. And I think that helps with
Mm.
not only my copy, but just helps me in life. I truly understand and want to understand and help other
Mhm.
people, and people can feel that. And I think that's it. Like we all have that, so it's not about being perfect. It's just about getting out there and going back to everything what I'm talking about just keeps like flowing together. And then it helps with consistency, right? Because when we're not trying to be perfect, it's a lot more easy to be consistent. So
Mhm. Mhm. And it's so great to hear you talk about like copywriting and getting comfortable with video, or getting good at video too, is are like really great things and important things for having success in business. Yet unless, if you are going into business as a copywriter or somebody who's teaching getting comfortable and good at video, you don't go into business thinking you're going to have to write so darn much or
mhm.
even show your face so darn much. You just think you're going to go and you're going to serve in your area of expertise. And then all of a sudden, all this writing and video stuff is thrown at you. If you want to actually run a successful business, that it can feel overwhelming and like terrifying to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of throw them off because they were like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this,
Right.
but
Yeah,
you
that's totally
did.
how it is. There's a lot of things on online business I feel like I didn't sign up for, right? But
Yeah.
I talk a lot too about, figuring out, and this goes into even, which I know we're going to get to, about how I talk about sales. It's like I think I had to figure out really from the beginning, like, okay, what am I fearful of because it's new and it's uncomfortable and I don't know? And what doesn't feel right to my gut? Like, what are things that I just know aren't me at the core and I would be like misrepresenting myself? And I
Mhm.
think when you can kind of like figure those two things out, it can help guide and lead you, because I don't think there's, one right way or wrong way when it comes to marketing and your sales. It's figuring out like I said, what's those things that kind of feel scary versus those things that are like, no, this isn't me. And this wouldn't be I don't love the word, but like an authentic representation of who I am.
That's absolutely true. And that's exactly how it is, that you need to listen to who you are and show up as yourself in the way that feels aligned with you.
Totally.
So true. And that kind of goes with that idea of zigging when everybody else is zagging. Like you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. You still have to do something, but like you can be different and that's okay.
Right. And sometimes them being different actually, when it comes to marketing, actually can help you, right? And helps
Yes.
you stand out. So that's the other
Yes.
advantage.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of those. So let's talk about launch strategy. What do you see as why that's important and what is helpful to include in your launch strategy? What kinds of things stand out to you?
Definitely when it comes to launch strategy, and where I focus in on is telling people about pre-launch.
Mm,
And pre-launch is probably the most effective, but probably the most overlooked part of a launch.
mm,
And in case someone's not familiar with it, it's typically what I think, especially if you are, if you're an e-com business, this might not be apply to you as much, but if you are a service-based business, if you are selling a course, a coaching program, mastermind, it's about 4 to 6 weeks before you actually officially open your doors. And even if you're in like an evergreen type of launch, we can talk about that as well. But it's really warming people up to your offer and priming them for your offer before you ever put an offer out in front of them. And I talk about the 4 A's of pre-launching and why it's so effective. And the first one is anticipation. So we may not have think about it, but anticipation, the way our brains are hardwired, I've done some research around this, is we actually look for, and you're a therapist, so you might even know like some of these studies, but our brains are hardwired to anticipate future events. They actually did a study on this. Like we look forward to things. So if you think about it, we're always looking forward to stuff like, what am I doing Friday? Like, what's the vacation I'm going on? My sister and I are already talking about Christmas. Like, like there's things that we just naturally, we naturally get excited about. And if you think about it, the entertainment industry is completely based on anticipation, right? Like what movies are coming out. You never find out about a movie when it comes out, whichever days they come out. I don't even pay attention, but for months ahead of time that this big movie is coming out, or if a new album is coming out. I was actually, when Top Gun came out, Lady Gaga, I was looking at her Instagram, like she actually had posts about her song that was going to be debuting and the why behind it, right? So she was getting you excited for her new song that was coming out. So anticipation is a tool on online business that most people aren't taking advantage of like they can. So that's the first A. The second A when it comes to pre-launch is autonomy.
mm,
And I'm really about giving people space in their decision making. When I first came onto the online scene, which wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it, right? I always joke around, online years are like dog years, so it feels like a long time. It was still in that moment where it's a little bit more of the pushy marketing, the big flashing numbers marketing, making you the shameful marketing sometimes. And there were certain things back then I was like, gosh, I could never do, like, this doesn't feel right. Or making people feel like if they didn't invest in, then usually from coaches, charging 5 figures, if you didn't invest, that you were making, you weren't making a great decision. Like there was some of that going on. And so I have always been the kind of person who's like, I can, if I feel like I'm selling something to you that feels like something you need, right? I don't mind extending and like a hand and being like, hey, I could actually help you with that. But I never like the pushiness of sales. And so what I love about pre-launch is that you really give people an autonomy in their decision, because you're letting them know that you have something come up, but you're building all this fun anticipation, but at the same time, you're letting they have time to actually process their decision making, and especially as we close out 2022, 2023 with, everything that's going on with our economy, how many people, online business is more saturated than ever. People are unfortunately have been burned by online courses. I just actually had someone respond to me on a survey I did, and it's just a reality that giving people space and letting them know, but being very strategic during that time can make a really big difference. The third A is assurance. And I call with assurance means is we're building trust. So as, building anticipation and giving people autonomy, we also need people to believe that, we are the expert, that we have credibility, showing like our testimonials, our social proof, building that know, like, and trust, getting people to know you on a more personal level. And as we know, trust takes time. And so, especially if you have someone new coming into your world, it's going to be hard to sell them possibly on a three, five, $10,000 package. It's a lot of times it's going to take a little space for them to think, but you can speed it up during the pre-launch period by really knowing how to talk to people and build that know, like, and trust. And then the last A is anecdotes. And this is my favorite part, which is that you get to tell stories, right? People remember stories. Story building, I'm sorry, not story building, but actually telling stories is been, we always hear storytelling. But when you can kind of incorporate all of your content before your launch and you become very memorable and you stick with people by using stories and you know how to use them properly, then you are staying with them. They're not just reading your stuff, they're actually kind of remembering who you are throughout the day because of different stories that you told. So when you kind of combine those four things, you can start to create a lot of momentum before you even open the doors for your selling period.
Those are such good points. I love how you grouped those things together because each of them does play such an important role. And I do think you are so right that the launch runway, that pre-launch time, is so underrated. When you do it right with a strategy like you're pointing out, it can make a huge difference. People do need to be warmed up. And like, I love that example that you gave about movies. It's so true. Hollywood will let you know about new movies coming out so long in advance. And the actors, they go on a speaking tour, right? On all the talk shows, the musician, it's being hyped up everywhere. Yep. And that anticipation really should be part of everybody's lead into their sale, to their launch time.
And it makes it so fun, right? Because it's like you're priming someone for the sale, but you're not actually like asking them to buy something. So I feel like it kind of takes the pressure. And then this is something I talk a lot about. It takes the pressure off of you, the salesperson, because you're not feeling like, oh, I'm selling, right? Like, and it also takes the pressure off. And that's where that autonomy comes in, where it takes the pressure off the other person as well. So that's the thing that I really love about it. It's definitely a way to go into a launch where it says you don't feel a lot of like that pressure, stress, and overwhelmed. And launching in general gets a bad rap, right? It's busy, and I'm not going to say like, oh, this is the answer to everyone's prayer, right? But when you do this nice launch runway and you're not just throwing out random content before launch, and you're really thinking through how to speak to your client or customer in a way that they get excited and are looking forward to what you're talking about, it creates this momentum, right? And people that have gone through I have someone who went through my program, the pre-launch plan program, the first time I ran it, and she's in her pre-launch right now, and she just sold her 5th spot before she even opened their door. So it's a way to also get sales ahead of time. And the cool thing that happens too is it builds up this great momentum, because when you are talking about your thing and people are interested and buying early, you get this like shot of confidence, which helps you, get out there and talk about it more. It also creates a little bit of like FOMO in your audience, like, oh wait, people are already buying. So then they get more interested. So I love like the cyclical effect of what happens when you start doing this.
I heard it said once, people don't want to buy what they need. They want to buy what other people are buying.
Oh, I haven't heard that quote. I'm going to have to find that one. It's true though, right? Yeah. We have it like, so when someone else, you think you had a girlfriend, like, oh, she gets like a new pair of shoes or a new bag. And you're like, wait, I want that too. Like, and that's just like, that's our natural human nature. And I think that's a lot of too, is like launching is like, sometimes we're not thinking through just this like natural human, going back to the human thing, but like how we are just as humans, right? Like none of us want to be pressured into a sale and be told we have 7 days to make, thousands of dollars worth of decision. Like no one wants that, right? That we all want more space, more excitement around the things that we buy.
And I can tell you, if people are buying because they're pressured into a sale, they will want probably a return. They won't go in all in and happy to be there and excited. They've come in with their fear because they bought in fear. And it just creates a really negative energy around that interaction. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think that ever works.
Well, it's a great point too. When I had interviewed, we have a mutual friend, Emily Reagan, and she is one of my private clients. And when I talked to her about like why she loves the pre-launch so much, and that was one of her points, right? Is exactly what you said. Like she was calling in like students who were ready to come in and do the work. And that's the other, I think it's such a great point that you brought up. When you give people this space and they're excited about their decision and they don't feel pressured, they come in really jazzed about it, and then they get great results because they're actually taking part in the program, and then they do the organic word spreading for you because of all the good stuff that happened to them.
Exactly. Exactly. So, what would you say to the person listening to this who is probably thinking, like, oh, I've got a pre launch period coming up, which we always know if you're not in launch mode, you are in pre launch mode. But
Right.
what do you think are, oh, just one or two things that would really stand out for them to start incorporating?
Right. Well, I'll say two things. The first thing is you're not selling your program, you're selling your process, right? So really thinking through, during pre-launch is not a time to, we might be making mentions of program and letting people know what's coming up, but that's not the main motivation. People have to believe. So I'll give you an example. I work with someone, my friend Linda Sabu, one-on-one, and she actually sells a program where she helps people build quizzes. But you have to believe that a quiz is the way to increase your revenue and also your email list before you ever want to buy her program, right? So that's a lot of what's happening, is that people are just jumping and trying to sell a program. And when it comes to selling a program, a code, or a one-on-one service, whatever it is, there's a whole different set of objections that come up from buying than there are a set of objections that actually come up, or myths that we believe, or things that we want from the process. So it's really keeping in mind, that's the first thing, is that you definitely you want to be selling the process and not the program. And then the second thing that I think is really important is, well, I think one of two things happens. Either people are so busy with their actual launch period that they don't really communicate with their people before launch. And and so that's like the biggest mistake. Like people have to see your face, right? Especially in this, and not even face, see your emails. They have to see your name to keep you top of mind. But the second thing is not just throwing out random content, because if anything, you're wasting a little bit of your time when you're not really thinking through, where people are and where they need to be when they buy from you. So if you're just throwing stuff out there, recording a reel because it's trendy, but not actually thinking through the strategy behind it, it can be a bit of a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Those are both such good points and so critical. I love how you're saying to focus on the transformation or to focus on the process versus the product, because I think it's a natural thing to do. We are so focused on our product being the best solution for everybody, pretty much. I know we have niches, but in our mind, we think it's good for everybody, right?
Right.
And so we want to just sing its praises and talk about the product, but it's really meeting them where they're at, because they don't know probably that they need that product yet. So speaking to where they're at right now is so important.
Right. And that's exactly
Yeah.
it. When people truly believe, even using myself as an example. Okay, if you listen to this and you're like, oh yeah, I definitely need to do a pre-launch, this is something I need to incorporate. Well, the natural next step is, okay, can I hire Brenna one-on-one? Can I take her program and have her show me how to do this? And then the sales becomes easier once again, because you're not having to convince someone that they need your product. It becomes a natural progression in the awareness journey and the awareness ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. Which helps with everything, helps with ads, helps with how you talk about it, and really helps to serve the audience and your future customer. So it's the best way to serve is by focusing on meeting them where they're at. Again, they're human. We want to connect with where they are and that humanity aspect of where they are right now, and help them feel like you get them.
Yep, that's exactly
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's so good. So when it comes to the pre-launch, you were talking about also showing up consistently
Mhm.
and being there instead of being erratic. And what I find is, when people are in a launch, they're on this launch roller coaster, and we're taught not to, because we have these attachments to the outcome, and to release that, and that will help you get off the roller coaster. But we're human and we still do anyway. And so as much as we try and let go of the outcome, there are a lot of attachments, and we can take some things personally, especially if the launch didn't hit your goals. And what I find happens is people are exhausted after their launch. And so even though they know they have another launch coming up, it's hard to rally, because the brain remembers, oh, we launched and we didn't have great outcomes. So why are we doing this again?
Right.
And there's this disappointment, discouragement, which doesn't provide the setup for you to show up consistently.
Right.
So what's one way you think people can move past that and show up consistently despite whatever happened in the last launch?
Well, not to like toot my own horn a little bit, but I do think if you have not done a pre-launch process like I've talked about, it will help immensely, because one of the other benefits that we haven't talked about with pre-launch is that you're figuring out objections, well ahead of time. You're figuring out why people, because when you have this pressure off, then all of a sudden people can speak more freely, they can ask questions and not feel. So you're actually collecting a lot of data. I think to a degree, launching is just, it is what it is, right? Like it's one of those things, like, yeah, there's going to be times where things go really great and it doesn't go really great. Like I never try and make anything seem like one magic bullet to fixing all of your sales, marketing, launching problems, right? But I do think, first of all, knowing that there's just quiet times in a launch, right? That my friend Marisa talks about, like sticking through to the end, like no matter what it's looking like. I think that's really important. But I do think that when you have a pre-launch process, then you're not going into a launch blind. And I think that's really what happens a lot of times, is that we go into a launch going, okay, I've got everything ready. I have this amazing sales argument. I have this beautiful sales page. Okay, I'm open for business. Come buy my stuff. And then that's where it feels a little bit more like, oh my gosh, when you go into a launch and you've already sold, 10, 20, 30% of your spots, all of that, a lot of that pressure is already off, right? I think too, having realistic expectations. I think the online world has, I was just talking to my business coach about this a little bit. Like, when sometimes we have to like take the online, we see so many people are like, oh, I had this like 6-figure launch, right? But like, what is really reasonable? What do your numbers say? Like, what are those things? Like, if you were, if you were doing this out in the real world, like really looking at things realistically, I think helps a lot too. But like I talked about, going through and having this process where you go in prepared into your launch, you go in excited, you go in with anticipation, you go in with people that feel really pumped. It makes a huge difference in your launch. So I think if you're someone who has launched and have had some problems, I also think too, a lot of time people don't realize, and I saw this with my first round of my program, is that we think that our messaging is really, and I think this is where me being a copywriter for so long, although messaging is a little bit different than copywriting, but if your messaging is off, your whole launch could be off. It could be simply just a messaging problem. So really making sure one way or another, but whether you're hiring a messaging specialist, a copywriter who understands messaging, but really making sure that your messaging is on point. Sometimes we think it is, and it's not quite dialed in, and people are confused and you don't even realize that. So I think there's a number of different things that you can look at to kind of say like, okay, how can I get away from this launch? But this launch trauma of like, I'm exhausted, is really kind of bringing an expert in sometime to kind of look at things with you with an analytical eye, really making sure your messaging is dialed down, doing a pre-launch so that you find bottlenecks, holes in your messaging well ahead of time before you get to your launch. Those things are going to make a big difference, and it's going to have you feeling a lot more excited and at ease. One of my students in the last round of the program, she was just saying how this time she, like, going into this is her third launch, and that she's never felt at ease. Even yesterday, she sent me a message and she was just like, am I forgetting something? Like, I feel like I'm forgetting something because this just feels so much easier than it's ever felt.
Wow. Wow. I think you nailed it on the head when you're like, do a launch debrief to make sure, that you've covered all your bases, you can fill any holes, but then also having a plan, having
Mhm.
a strategy. So you can kind of let go of, yeah, just like the what's next and what am I doing, and kind of shut down that emotional part of the brain that is like screaming, let's get out of here. And instead, just calm it down and to say, no, we have a plan. This is good. We're going to follow it. We've done our debrief. We have, everything set out for us. And let's focus on that and one step at a time.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, whether it's been private clients I've worked with or people within my group, when you talk about a plan, like most people think, oh, I have a launch plan. Like I know what I'm doing. But when I make them like sit down and actually write everything out and create it, no one's had a plan so far. Like almost everyone I've worked with, everyone is like, oh, or they're not thinking through things like, oh, like this is, spring break week and I'm trying to launch or things like that. So I think too, that's kind of like these things where like, oh, launching has been so tough, but it's like you don't even realize you think that you're prepared, but you're not really as prepared as you think you are. So
Mhm.
just simple things like what you said, having a plan, like getting out an actual calendar or doing it on, I'm a paper person, like I said, I'm in my 40s. So I still do like the old school. I have to like write it out and see it first. But
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference of going
Yeah.
into a launch and not feeling that overwhelming stress,
Yeah.
because usually there's a bunch of things we haven't thought through all the way. And
Mhm.
then that puts all this extra pressure and stress on us because we don't realize, oh yeah, I was supposed to like send out an affiliate packet or swipe copy. And now I got to go do that. Like all of that stuff like adds up. So by the time you get to your launch, you're already depleted. And it's hard to keep the energy up when you're depleted from the get-go.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so true. It's so much about energy management, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
So tell the listener, how can they work with you? Where can they find you? What kinds of offers do you have? What would you like to let the listener know?
Well, first of all, if you're interested in what I've been talking about and you're like, okay, where do I even start with this pre-launch business? I have a checklist, a cheat sheet that you can go to brennamcgowan.co/cheat sheet. And this cheat sheet will give you ideas of content that you should be putting out before your launch to help move people closer from, what are you what are you selling to wanting them to, where they're like, yes, I definitely want to buy. So that's the first way. I run a group coaching program called the Prelaunch Plan Program. And this is where I take people through my in-depth process that I do with one-on-one clients. And I show you how to create a pre-launch that really supports your launch. But quite honestly, like you said, if you're not in launch, you're in pre-launch, right? So it'll help you with every content, with every, I was just talking to some of my coaching students yesterday, and they were or coaching clients, and they were saying, gosh, like I knew that I came in for the pre-launch, but like I'm walking away with like I now can use these things for all of the content I'm putting out. Or if you're someone who's like, I don't want to think about any of this and I want you to come in and work with me and do it for me, I do have some one-on-one packages where people can hire me to come in and do this process for them.
Okay, wonderful. And I will definitely have the links to all of the things that Brenna mentioned in the show notes. So definitely go check that out. Get her freebie because that sounds so valuable to make you feel good about going into a launch. So thank you so much for that. I love
Thank you.
it. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear all of your wisdom that you have for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And if you are looking for more support, challenge, and inspiration in running your online business, I would love to have you apply to my mastermind. Check it out at jenargue.com.